Hey there, and welcome to Business Over Cocktails. I'm Lauren Najar, your host and hype woman, bringing you real talk about entrepreneurship. This is the podcast where we dive into the bold whys, the messy middles, and the game-changing aha moments that lead to success. You'll hear unfiltered stories from entrepreneurs, plus bite-sized solo episodes inside the Business Chaser series, where we cut through the noise and get straight to what actually drives sales, visibility, and growth. So whether you're here to get fired up or finally feel seen in your business journey, pull up a seat, pour your favorite drink, and let's have a real conversation. Hello, welcome back to Business Over Cocktails. You get a solo episode with myself today, and I'm going to talk today about overcoming sales objections, and it's not going to be what you think it's going to be about. I'm not going to help you actually overcome them. I want you to rethink sales objections today. And by the end of this episode, I hope you either resonate with something different. I hope that you can think about your sales conversations a little bit differently, and that objections don't have to be uncomfortable, and they might not even be something that you need to even dig deeper on, but we'll talk about that. So I want to start by saying that I've been on my share on the receiving end of a sales call, and I have a 10-year banking experience in my background that's where I worked, right? I spent 10 years in the banking industry. I have been around finance most of my adult life, money banking, retail banking, commercial banking. I went to school for finance. Money is a huge thing when it comes to anything that I do. And, I love that side of the world, and I pay attention to a lot of that stuff. I know that growing up that, I equated working hard with money. I know that yes, you have to work hard, but I feel like that's not necessarily the case. You don't have to overwork yourself to make more money. And I'm slowly starting to get, that unraveled in my brain. You have to be smart with money. And so I wanted to give you this background information first before I get into sales objections, because a lot of the sales objections that we hear as business owners or anything is around money, investments, investing money into, buying a product, service, offer, whatever that is. I have been on the receiving end of a lot of sales calls, right? I've gone on a bunch of sales calls to work with certain people. The coaches that I've hired that have been my best hires that I've worked with, I actually never got on a sales call with them. I got to know them through direct message. I got to know them through just talking with them, voice messaging, following their content, downloading their freebies, receiving their emails. And that's how I've gotten to know every single person that I've worked with. So I feel that with sales calls, they can be very, uncomfortable. And when I get on a sales call, it's usually because I can't find out the information that I want, right? That's not readily available on someone's website, which again, their job, and I'm not disclaiming this, I'm not making it seem like a bad thing. It's just not my cup of tea, but they make people get on sales calls so then they can sell you on the product or the service right when you're on the call, right? They're trained to do that. They have scripts, they have selling points, they know how to overcome objections. But me being on the receiving end, I also can tell when the script is coming or they're not genuinely having a conversation with me. And it's just not, again, not my cup of tea. I will keep saying that. Where I think that selling gets its bad rap is in these moments, because selling for a large part of the world comes from you have a certain way to sell, right? You can study sales psychology, buyer psychology, why people buy. There's so many different things out there. But I will encourage you to focus on other things, meaning that building relationships is probably the best way to make sales. You can study sales psychology, buyer psychology, whatever new trend you want to focus on or research that you want to do. But at the end of the day, people buy from people that they trust and that they believe and are clear on the person that can solve their problem the fastest, right? And that comes from maybe social proof, that comes from testimonials, that can come from anything else. Now, again, going back to the sales call, and I think of two specific sales calls that I've been on. And both of them, I was meeting with the salesperson for the actual coach. The first sales call started out to be really great, and it was a male who was doing the call. Actually, both of them were men that I talked to on both these sales calls I'm going to reference. And I really just wanted to get the information because it wasn't readily available to me. I am not a person that would shy away from an investment if I believe A, I want to work with that person, B, I think the program is going to fit me, and C, if I can actually afford it. Now, and again, this happened to me when I started coming up the ranks as a coach, the large part of the coaching industry will tell you that you have to overcome objections. And if someone tells you that they can't invest in XYZ services, you have to get to the bottom of it. And I agree to some extent. A lot of times when someone presents with the thing of like, I can't afford it right out of the gate, sometimes there is an underlying meaning of like, maybe they actually don't trust themselves. Maybe they don't understand, what the ROI is going to be. Maybe they don't trust themselves to get the money back or trust the coach or whatever it is. And that's okay. And I understand that you need to get to the bottom of it. But there are people out there that are equipped to make their own financial decisions. Here's where I want you to start rethinking this. I think that these scripts are limited. I think that sales objections are very limiting and very laser focused on the wrong issues. And it prevents you from actually having a good conversation to get to the bottom and build rapport and trust. With the first sales call that I've referenced, we had a very good conversation. He was very nice, related to me in a lot of ways, seemed very interested. But when I started to ask questions, he was reading from a script. And it was so uncomfortable because I immediately thought like, I'm not talking to a person anymore. I'm talking to a robot. And it immediately lost my business because I wanted to know more information and he didn't want to give it to me, nor did he have the answers because the script limited him. I ended up not working with this person, this coach, this program. I still follow them, not as much anymore, but around that time, like I still was interested in joining anything else, maybe down the road, but then they actually stopped following up with me too. So it is what it is. That's why follow-ups are key too. I probably would have eventually worked with them. But in that moment, I didn't get the connection I was hoping to get. Now, the second call that I did was for a high-profile female coach. She's a huge coach, and I met with her salesperson. Again, he actually gave me a lot of value on the sales call. He gave me even a strategy and a plan. And then when I found out the amount of the program, I will say too, the sales call was unexpected. I agreed to something else. I did not agree to a sales call. It ended up being a sales call, which that in of itself is a little messy. But then also too, the call ended up being beneficial, but he also never followed up with me after the sales call. He did give me a lot of information, but then he just started laughing at me when I was like, okay, no, I need to think about this and need to run some numbers in my finances because I didn't know how much the program was going to be. And I'm not about to agree and give my credit card information over the phone. If I want to say this too, there's nothing wrong with you going back and checking your finances. I would actually encourage you to do that. Do not feel pressured to say yes on a call. Yes, as a salesperson, that is an amazing feeling, right? But a lot of times, the caller is not equipped to make that decision financially in a good headspace when they're on a sales call. I will always say no. If they're going to tell me that I need to make a decision right now and that I don't care to jump into this program because I'm not ready to invest right on this call, it's a no for me, dog. It's a no. Any responsible financial person would actually go back and run the numbers with their budget. Because you should have a budget. You should understand how much you're spending, your expenses, how much you're bringing in, how much are you actually going to get the ROI, how much you're going to pull out of your savings to make this investment to pay for this person. Any responsible business person or person in general should make a decision based on that and not an impulse decision. So that's kind of where I want to start with this is these are the things that I believe. I, again, have a background in finance. I have a background in banking. I know people's money situations. I know how messy it could be. I know how much debt people can carry, and it doesn't seem like people are carrying debt. I know that people who look unassuming don't look like millionaires, but those are the people that do make a lot of money. So everything is not what it seems. And so too often I think that objections are just meant to be, we're meant to bulldoze through them. What if the objections actually give us feedback? That's kind of like what I want to start thinking about. We can get objections a lot where we get objections sometimes where it's money focused. Okay, great. But is it really money focused or do they not trust us? And so whenever I get an objection or they're not ready or they're kind of like him and hawing over working with me, then I always look to myself. I'm not looking to that person. I'm looking to myself. Did I do everything in my power to not only build trust and rapport and a relationship with this person, but is it clear what I'm offering? Is it clear how I can help them? Are my results clear? And am I selling enough? Am I building trust? Am I showing proof? Like all of these things matter in your marketing, in your content, how you build a relationship with the person. That's going to be the biggest thing that you do anytime you're getting objections, especially if you're getting multiple in a row. It's like, okay, like if I'm getting no, are these people warm enough? Am I doing a good enough job to articulate the value and the ROI of what this person's going to receive with me? Sometimes it is us, and that's the only issue. It's not the person. On a subconscious level, they don't trust us. So what do we have to do? We have to go back to the drawing board and we have to make sure that the people that want to work with us actually want to work with us and they're ready to say yes. So if we have a lot of people that are in our audience and we have a lot of leads, but they haven't pulled the trigger yet and we haven't converted anyone, it's always up to us. Are we doing enough? So also too, the flip side is true. Maybe people really just don't have the money, and that's okay. And that just means a no right now, and that's fine. Let them be. We're all adults. We're making decisions and we're making deals with other adults. As adults, we have to assume that they know what's best for their financial future. Because what the opposite's true. What if they take out $10,000 on a high interest credit card and that's the only debt that they can get, and then all of a sudden they lose their job and they can't make the payments and then they can't pay you and then it's all this whole mess and maybe you're going to get disputes, and you have to pay this money back to the credit card company and all this other stuff, right? And so that's messy. I would never want to force anyone to invest in me if they choose not to because they can't truly afford it. I would never want to pressure anyone into that situation because again, we're all adults. We can all make our decisions. And while I think that sometimes we do have to have a little bit of motivation, a little bit of a booty boost, right? Like a little bit of push to make uncomfortable decisions. That's my job of my content to motivate them to do that. And again, maybe talking to them too on a human level and not relying on objection-handling scripts. Now, we can think of the objections that we hear, right? So objections can be, I can't afford it. But a lot of these other things could be that maybe the timing is off, or I don't have enough time to do this. I don't have enough time to commit to this. Okay, well, that then gives you the idea of maybe this person isn't someone that you actually want to work with then. Because if they made this call, right, they booked a call with you or they're having this sales conversation with you in the DMs or they're talking to you about working together, maybe it was just impulse then. Because then if they're actually starting to think about working with you and they don't want to and they're just creating an excuse of I don't have the time to commit, it's like, okay, if you don't have the time, I don't want to work with you then either because this does dedicate time. If you can't dedicate time to your results and working together, then that's not a win-win situation for either of us. it makes me feel really bad to accept money from people who don't show up to their calls. That's another thing that I really don't like. And then maybe too, it's misalignment. Maybe it's like, okay, this isn't really what I need. Okay, fine. That's okay too. You don't need to convince anyone to work with you. If you're convincing and like pulling them by the hand and like shoving them into your pipeline, like we don't want to work with people that don't want to be there. So that's kind of the stance that I take when it comes to all of those other issues. But again, I also look inward. Now, if it's, oh, I don't have the time, is it really that you don't have the time? Or is it really that I did not do a good job of articulating like how much time you need to put into this? Or do I need to coach you on this a little bit more? Is my content doing a good enough job in order to help you throughout like, building your business or whatever it is? The other thing could be like lack of clarity and confusion. They're not really sure if this is for them. I would make sure that I'm open to receive questions and to explain what my offers are and how I specifically can help them. There's something that I can do, and I know that this is something that comes from experience, which I think the more sales conversations that you have with people, or the more you talk about money with people and your customers, this is going to be super impactful for you. I can tell when someone is using a surface level excuse or objection versus like, no, like they actually can't afford it. And there's a difference. There's always a difference in how someone can respond and talk to you. So that is something too where, again, we have to give credit to the person that we're speaking with. We have to let them have their own discernment. That is 100% the thing. And we could be saying like, well, our close rate will go down if we're not trying hard enough. Like that's not something I'm worried about. I don't worry about like my conversion rate on sales calls, because if I actually take a look at all the proposals, if I take a look at the proposals that I'm sending out, I close 95% of them. And maybe I can close more if I had more calls, but like that's just not how I want to build my business, and that's okay. I don't want to get on calls with cold people 10 times a week and try to convince them to work with me. I like to build relationships and get to know the people I'm working with. So, but again, like there's like an energetic tone that I can tell when someone is like giving me a surface level objection versus like, oh no, like, no, they actually can't afford it, or they don't believe that they can do this, and that I take action where I see fit. So I think like the difference though, I mentioned like sometimes do I need to do some additional coaching or ask questions around this? I think there's always a space around that where you can overcome the objection if you feel like you need to answer questions. So I think the art of asking questions versus convincing is huge. So I don't want to convince you or laugh at you or give you like this limited belief of like, like, okay, like I guess you'll just stay stuck. Like I've gotten that on sales calls, which is not fun. But I will say like the one question that I do like, and I know that sometimes people don't like this question, but I will ask it when I feel like the person needs that boost. And it's like, what happened? Like, and I give them that boost when I know that they're uncomfortable and they're unsure of themselves, meaning like that it's not necessarily that they think that they can't afford it, but that they're just not sure that they want to commit to this and this feels very scary to them. And it's my job to maybe guide them over that hump sometimes. So I will ask them like, where do you want to be in the next year? And what would happen if you're in the same spot you were a year from now? And I do like that question. Again, I'm not going to ask that every single time and like make someone feel bad. I'm going to ask that question when I know someone needs that final push. Because again, I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to chase you. I have clients who are aligned all of the time. I don't need to chase people. And frankly, I don't want to work with people who I need to chase, because then that creates a dynamic where then I'm always going to have to take your hand and tell you what to do. And that's not the coaching program or the services that I offer. I partner with people. And so I don't want to ever get off on the wrong foot of like what you think this is going to be. And I would encourage you to do the same, having those boundaries in place from the get-go of even just having a sales conversation or your onboarding process of like, You're not going to do extra things and babysit people. Like, again, I'm going to go back to this saying, we're all adults, right? We have discernment. We should have discernment. We need to learn discernment. And we need to understand that people are capable of making their own decisions and they're in control of their own destiny. Yes, you hire coaches to help you. Yes, you hire mentors to mentor you. You hire VAs and those kinds of people to help you with specific tasks, but we're still here. It's still our responsibility. It's our business at the end of the day. And so I think that some other questions that you can ask, if you want to explore more stuff would be maybe like a question to ask, like, what's coming up for you? What are you feeling? What do you need to feel that's true or safe in order for you to move forward? Or just if you need to follow up or check in with someone, you can do that and get an agreement of like, can I check in with you in 3 days or 2 days or a week from now? Like, ask them specifically when you can follow up with them. So then it's a welcomed follow-up, right? You're not going to like annoy them. So to be honest, I got to be honest, I don't really ever need to overcome objections because I am taking the position of making sure that I'm building strong relationships, but that I'm also articulating a lot of these things in my content of what it's like to work with me, the social proof, the results, the referrals that I have, the people that share. Again, this comes down to maybe even client experience as well. So my personal approach to overcoming objections is really that. I'm not going to get the objection at all. So like, I don't expect objections when I jump on calls or I'm having conversations in the DMs. And if I do get an objection, usually it is that they legit can't afford it. And like they explained to me all of their financial situations and I'm going to let it be. If they're telling me that they are taking out of their retirement fund to pay their bills, or if they are trying to pay off a credit card or they have big projects around the house, and okay, fine. Maybe those are excuses and I can dig deeper, but I'm going to err on the side of we are all adults. And if that is their true financial situation, that's what I'm going to take it as. And then once you pay that off and you're going to say, yeah, I'll come invest, great. I've had people do that. I've had people that say that, we need to pay off this thing or these medical bills and then I will work with you. I've had people do that. I've had people that come back a year later and say, like, I'm finally ready to work with you. Great. I'm always going to be here because I'm still going to keep in touch with you. And if you tell me no, doesn't mean no right now. I'm still going to try and support you as best as I can. But this is how I hold integrity too, of, again, if someone's real with me and telling me that they're in these dire financial situations, I'm never going to convince them to work with me. That's just not, I'm not going to dig deeper on those things because, again, I know the responsibility or the lack of responsibility people have towards financial situations in all areas of industries and banking and their lives. And again, like how money just makes people tick. Like, it's just really crazy how some people think of money. But I also need to stay in my integrity, and I could not actually in good conscience take someone's money that I feel like is like the bottom of the barrel for them. And they're telling me also that they're like, oh, I need this business to work. I would love to work with you, but I can't afford groceries right now. Like I could never do that if someone is telling me that. But I can stay in service. I can say like, okay, like if something changes, like we can revisit this. And my boundaries as well. My boundaries of I'm not going to be someone's end all be all, and you cannot put all of your eggs in one basket with me. I am here for one part of your business, and I'm here to help you. And again, we're all discernible adults at the end of the day. So that means that people are responsible for making their own decisions. And unless I'm running your business with you side by side, you cannot in good conscience put all of your eggs in one basket for me or for anyone for that matter to expect them to get you results overnight. Now, the one thing that I want to say, and I kind of referenced this already with 2 sales calls that I said earlier, and neither one of those people followed up with me. And the second call he said he would follow up, and he never did. And the whole process though was a little like obnoxious. I was getting random texts for reminders from other people that I was not having the call with. I was told I was going to have a call with, I don't know, say his name is James. I was booked with a call with James, but then I had text coming from like a girl named, I don't know, Lisa. And Lisa's like, hey, like we have our call in 10 minutes, right? And I'm like, what? I have my call with James tomorrow. And then, okay, never mind. Like it was just such a messy process. And then I was never followed up with. I was never checked back in with. I was never engaged with again. I was for sure like, I need to get off this call. And it got more and more uncomfortable as I got off the call. So maybe that's why they didn't follow up with me. But he also bragged on the call too of like how many sales he brought in, and almost like he thought he was for sure going to close me on this call, but whatever. That wasn't going to happen. And so again, I will say too, like, because I've been in this game a lot, is I know what questions are going to be asked, and it's just so painful. And I think another thing to think about when you are wanting to have a sales conversation, or maybe you're trying to make sales scripts work in your business, is that if you're like, you have to give your audience some credit, like, especially if they're going to invest like a few $1,000s in you, or you're going to help them make a lot more money. Like, your audience is smarter than what you're putting out there. You know, your audience understands what a sales script is, and they have already made their own decisions on sales scripts and how they do sales calls, right? And I'm always going to do things my own way. I'm always going to do things how I see fit. And yes, I will take advice and, tips from people who are doing it better than me, but I'm still going to put that through my own filter. And if I'm okay with it or I'm not okay with it, and I'll try anything once. I have done sales scripts before, and guess what? I was immediately uncomfortable, and it took away all active listening skills that I have, right? In order to have an actual genuine conversation. I could not listen. I had so much trouble listening to the answers of the question because I was so concerned of what the next question was going to be in the script. I didn't listen to people. Somehow I still closed them, but I feel like it's because the conversation ended up going way longer than it was supposed to be, and I just ended up having a conversation with them. And I ditched the script halfway through, where I just like forgot. So I will back to like my banking career that I reference is one thing that I will say, I definitely worked in a very toxic environment, and the company wasn't that great. Wasn't really great to their employees at the time when I worked there. And a lot of people had toxic bosses and things like that. But the one thing I will say that really kind of opened my eyes into being a better salesperson was a way that they were structuring how to make sales. And so I was not only on the retail banking side. So what that means is I was responsible for getting like more accounts and loans and credit cards and things like that. But I was also the assistant branch manager for half of my career there. And I was also then not only did I need to be certified in how they handled their sales conversations, but I also was in charge of training people. And I had to train up to, I think, 20 plus people on this. So I knew this pretty well. And while they called it a sales conversation, they still had a structured way of doing it, which I absolutely hated. But what it did open my eyes to is how you can just have a conversation. And I think the thing is like I had to be certified in a way that was still structured, and I had to ask questions a certain way, even though they were telling me just to have a conversation. So like for me, that wasn't computing. And I think now having gone through ICF accreditations and coaching for that, like I understand that a little bit more of like, yes, there's always going to be ways to improve, different ways to ask questions, but you still need to get to the result, right? And so there were buckets that we needed to hit in the sales conversation and ask different questions, which I think is not warranted sometimes. And so for me, again, what I want to say is like it really opened my eyes to just having a conversation, right? Starting a conversation with how are you today? What does your day look like today? Oh, I do have a few minutes to just kind of go over your financial history. And then as you talk to them, they're going to give you these cues and clues. And I think this is something, again, sales-minded people, it clicks for us very easily, but cues and clues are going to be things that you can dig deeper into, right? So if someone is coming in and I'm going to give you a banking example, right? Banking example would be someone comes in, they want to open up a checking account and they are new to the area and they're transferring all of their banking to this bank because it's the closest to their new house. And they're only opening up a checking account. Naturally, people, for the most part, have more at different banks and institutions than just a checking account. They might have a debit card, online banking, credit cards, vehicle loans, mortgage, second mortgage, personal loans, like there are savings accounts. Like there is so many things I could be pitching to this person, right? That was like a gold mine for me. Well, throughout their conversation, they're going to talk about how maybe they are married and their spouse isn't with them. And I could say, oh, okay, like where does your spouse bank? Like, are they going to be coming in? And then they could say that they have a 16-year-old who's going to get a job soon. Okay, great. Like, do they have a checking account? Have you thought about opening up a checking account for them so then they can get their direct deposit into their checking account? So there's you can have a normal conversation, but you can pick up on those things too. That is how you can have a sales trained mind. So think about scenarios of conversations that you have within your own industry and possibly potential clients, right? I could think of health and fitness, right? Those are common things that we talk about a lot with just our friends. Think about even just having conversations with your friends though, and just be like, oh my God, you're struggling with this? Well, I know a girl. I know someone. I go here, I go there. You should go check out my girl, right? You're selling them. That's selling. That's selling and giving them advice on how to improve their life. So now just do that in your business. That's all it takes. So one thing though I want to say is about follow-ups though is you have to follow up. Please follow up. Please follow up even if you think it's going to be a no and you have a bad feeling. Please follow up. You never know. Because, and I'll give you an example of this. I ran a sales challenge recently and some people just stop participating halfway through, which is normal. A lot of times when you're in a challenge and it's 30 or it's more than 10 days, and it's just my experience too. I had a handful of people that did every task, people that caught up, but I had some people drop off and just not participate, and that's normal. The one thing that I did though is I messaged everyone to thank them and I offered them other things to work together. And I did have one person who wants to book a call to work with me one-on-one, and she didn't post every single day. So you never know. So please follow up with those people. So objections aren't bad information, and they're not things that you need to equip yourself to always overcome. I want you to think about objections as feedback. Not only for that specific relationship with that person, but also how you're approaching your business and your marketing. And so if you're constantly getting objections and selling feels hard and sales aren't coming in, please ask yourself where you need to improve in your business as a whole and your marketing, because a lot of that stuff can do the heavy lifting for you where you might not even get objections at all. The other thing is that there are surface level objections, but there are also objections that you can just let it be, right? If someone's literally telling you they don't have money over and over again, do not dig deeper. If you have this feeling of I feel like they're not lying to me, let it go, right? You don't need to convince them to take out a mortgage or a loan, and that's just shady business practices, and that's not ethical to do. Absolutely not. I would never want to be associated with that. Now, if I don't know that, right? Sometimes people will agree, and then all of a sudden I find out later on that they can't afford it because they did those kinds of things. Then of course, then I work with them and I will say, okay, we can extend your payment plan, or we can do smaller payments, or what can you afford this month? Whatever it is. I've had a handful of clients over the years that I've had to do that with. So, but again, that's integrity on both sides. That's integrity and transparency on both sides, but that's also keeping your boundaries respectful as well. Of you don't work with people who can't afford you. That's going to be such a lose-lose situation down the road. So I hope this gave you some insights of how to think of objections differently. And again, I will say if I ever get an objection, the first thing I'm thinking about is myself. I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about what I need to do to improve my content. So that is it for this episode. I hope this was helpful. I encourage you to audit your own sales processes, your marketing. And if you are getting those objections, do you feel like you're combating that in other ways? And then do you know what a real objection is versus like a surface level one where you actually need to listen to the person? Or are you using a script? I would encourage you to kind of like ditch the script. Maybe that's something that you can practice on. But I truly feel like the script is limiting to you actually listening to somebody and having a real conversation with them. So that is my feedback for you. If you want to send me a DM, I would love to know what your takeaways are. And of course, if you ever want to hear me talk about a certain topic in a future episode, please let me know. The last thing I will say is I recently posted and asked people were interested in coming on to interview me about certain topics and ask certain questions. I am accepting people now for that as of this recording, and we're booking into 2026. I will have a few people. So I may not be doing this by the end of this if you're listening to this a long time in the future, but I will be asking for people to come on and interview me on various things about business or life in general. So if you're interested in that, send me a DM at Business Over Cocktails, and we will all chat soon. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Business Over Cocktails, where real stories and bold business moves come to life. If this episode lit something up in you, share it with a friend, tag me at Lauren Najar or the podcast page at Business Over Cocktails. Make sure to leave a quick review as well. It helps more than you know. Until next time, keep chasing what matters and building the business that feels like you. Cheers.